Now, Jesus was born a subject of the Roman Empire during a period that is referred to as the Pax Romana, or the Roman peace. Uh, it was a period in which the Roman Empire enjoyed continuous peace, prosperity, and security. It began about 27 years or so before the Common Era and lasted for about 200 years. Many scholars believe that Jesus was born around 4 years before the Common Era. And if this is correct, that means that the Pax Romana was about 23 years in when Jesus was born. Dr. Smith, give us a sense of the political and socio-economic climate that prevailed during that time, focusing on the years of the Pax Romana that actually intersected Jesus' life. What did the Pax Romana mean for the subjects of this vast Roman Empire? And in particular, what did it mean for those subjects, those Roman subjects living in Palestine, especially in the area of Judea, where Jesus was born?
Surely. I mean, the Pax Romana is not a specific time period, but it's usually associated with or applied to the period of the Roman Empire and or what we call the Principate, which began with the reign of Augustus and which actually, in many ways, marks the end of a period of civil war within the Roman Republic. And during that period of the Roman Republic that led up to the Principate, up to the period of the Empire, you saw Rome's expansion. In the Punic Wars, Rome established its hegemony over the western part of the empire. And then in the end of the second and beginning of the first century BC, the Roman Empire expanded and consolidated its possessions in the east, specifically in Egypt and Asia Minor, and along with that came Palestine. Now, Rome extended to Palestine and specifically to the Jews a policy of privilege, and that first was given by Pompey the Great, and then after he was defeated by Julius Caesar, Caesar extended the same sort of privilege to the Jews. And one of the things that's curious is that for Jews, in the Roman eyes, the Jews were a very curious people because the Romans were a very gregarious and social folk. And the Jews, because of their dietary restrictions, were intentionally withdrawn from society. So they were peculiar in the eyes of Romans. But there was something that the Jews possessed that the Romans admired, and that was their religion was ancient. And to be old was good, and to be new was looked upon with suspicion by the Romans. I mean, reflecting a very conservative sensibility. And consequently, the Jews were exempt from various obligations such as military service or participating in Roman religious rituals, which would be deemed to be uh, engaging in polytheism, which would be contrary to Jewish teachings. Now, Palestine itself was was not a terribly valuable province. In fact, for Pontius Pilate to be made governor of Palestine or Judea, as we call it, was not a high compliment. This was a backwater province. I mean, essentially, the Romans occupied territory for two primary reasons. One was to draw resources from those provinces, such as the great mines of Spain or the granaries and fields that produced grain to sustain the major cities, such in North Africa, whether it's Egypt or then what we called Africa province, there in modern day Tunis. But you didn't have any of that really in Judea. Instead, you had taxes. So, one of the things that the Romans were concerned about was being able to tax the people. And this meant that the Romans, on the one hand, exhibited a policy of religious toleration. They didn't try to impose their religion on the people of that period. I mean, that's a surefire way to arouse dissent. And you can't collect taxes if you're having to put down a rebellion. So the Romans were not inclined to do that. On the other hand, the Romans did want taxes. And for instance, when in the birth narrative, it says that Caesar Augustus was summoning all people to be counted. A census was to be taken. Well, the purpose of the census was to know
Tax.
how big the population was in order to be able to tax them to get maximal wealth from the taxes. But Palestine was also a province that was occupied by Roman military forces, and there in Jerusalem, right next to the temple, you had the fortress Antonia, which is where the Roman soldiers, the Roman garrison, was located. And part of that was that if you had the Roman garrison right there next to the temple, if there was the expectation on the part of the people that any sort of religious uprising out of religious fervor, out of expectation of a Messiah or whatever, if it would start in Jerusalem, it would be focused around the temple. And therefore, having the fortress right next to the temple meant that the emperor and the Roman governor could deploy troops immediately to put down any sort of rebellion that might break out there. While I said that religious toleration was extended, the Romans could be very, very brutal in their occupation. Let me read a quick, short passage from the Roman historian Tacitus. I mean, Tacitus is a Roman aristocrat, and he wrote a work called Agricola, and it's speaking about Roman leadership in Britain. And in this story, or in this history, he places into the mouths of a Briton living in the northern part of Britain the following words, the following descriptions of what it meant to be a Roman citizen, or not a Roman citizen, but a Roman subject. There are no tribes beyond us, nothing indeed but waves and rocks, and yet more terrible Romans, from whose oppression escape is vainly sought by obedience and submission. Robbers of the world, having by their universal plunder exhausted the land, they rifle the deep. If the enemy be rich, they are rapacious. If he be poor, they lust for dominion. Neither the east nor the west has been able to satisfy them. Alone among men they covet with equal eagerness poverty and riches. To robbery, slaughter, plunder, they give the lying name of empire. They make a desert and call it peace. They make a desert and call it peace. Now, whether these are the actual words of a Briton, a Caledonian, or whether they are Tacitus's words, they sum up an attitude about the avarice that drove the empire. And notice the key point is it's not just that they sought wealth, but there was something in the idea of dominion, that the Roman Empire covered most of the known world. And therefore, that gave them a sense of greatness and glory. And that's part of what's driving the Roman sense of conquest, or the Roman impulse of conquest.